You're listening to the Picks from the Paddock, Turf Talk podcast.
Hello. It is me, Rory Paddock, for what is episode 4 of the Turf Talk podcast. This week, we're going to be looking and delving into the Racing Post's recent article with trainer Gordon Elliott. Also going to have a little bit of a jibe at various other tweets as well and things around social media. As always, we'll be doing our classic head-to-head where Matt and Chris pick from a set criteria their best horses. It's up to you to vote as to which of these two guys' suggestions are the best or the right one. Furthermore, we are going to be doing our classic notebook horses, whereby any horse over the past week that we like the look of, we're going to be telling you whether or not they should be going in your trackers. And finally, seems to be a bit of a favourite, we're going to be playing a game once again of Who Am I? Chris came out on top last week looking at sprinters. This week we're going to have a little bit of something different, whether or not Chris can retain his success or Matt bounces back and makes it 3 victories out of 4. We shall see. So without further ado, let's bring the gents into play. How are we doing, chaps?
How about
good? Yeah, good, thanks.
Good. I mean, we'll get it over and done with. The Racing Post obviously published an article, I think was it today or yesterday, in regards to an interview with Gordon Elliott, since obviously what happened prior to his ban and then getting his ban. This is his first sort of major statement with the paper since then, giving a bit of airtime. But what I'll do before we go into it, I'm not going to read it all, but I will bring it up on screen, sort of the for those that are watching this on either Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, and they'll be able to see that there. Some of the quotes from Elliott in regards to when he saw the likes of Envoy Allen, Sir Gerhard, and Calixios move to rival yards. Elliott said that was the lowest point throughout it all. He added that I had worked very hard to source those horses, and then they were gone just like that. When Envoy Allen was here, there wasn't a night I didn't lie in bed thinking about him. And now that he's gone, there still isn't a night I don't lie in bed thinking about him. Also goes on to say, how when Calixios won the Triumph Hurdle, Henry de Bromhead, who obviously took charge of Calixios going forward, rang me to say, well done. And he made a point of acknowledging me on television, which was decent of him. And Sir Gerhard hadn't even crossed the line in the champion bumper when I got a text from Willie Mullins. Elliott lost, I think it was a dozen horses in total, and said, I've never had a crossword with any of the owners who left. I still speak to them all, and the gate is always open. I understand completely why they had to go. Having said that, I still have a brilliant bunch of owners here who have stuck by me and want to support me and want to see me get back to where I was. Now, chaps, obviously we've all had various discussions about this. When it happened, when he got his ban, the press that got, sort of the damage to racing, his subsequent sort of like ban and his subsequent punishment, shall we say. But I know you've got a lot to say on this, Chris, so I'm going to give you the floor first. Bad call by the Racing Post, or are they just reporting his words straight from the horse's mouth, as it were?
This is a shocking call. It's the worst call the Racing Post have ever made in all my time reading the absolute shite. I have no words for whoever dreamt this idea up to release this portrayal of him as being the victim and poor me, I've lost this, poor me, I've lost that, I want to get back to this, I. Where's the remorse in thinking about what you've lost? That's all it's about. This campaign from the Racing Post, we hear all the time from contributors of the Racing Post about how you should behave and this, that, and the other, forever telling people to be kind and all the rest of that crap, which, fair enough. But this was a terrible, terrible sin committed by Gordon Elliott. You have to remember that these racehorses, these are what put food on his table. These horses have amassed him a fairly significant wealth, a great lifestyle. And for the Racing Post to be pushing stories like that, I'm sorry, but whoever released them snippets And that little write-up, they should have been sacked. They're so out of touch with reality, so out of touch with the public's feeling on this. It was a disgraceful episode, regardless of what you think of Gordon Elliott's ban.
I mean, looking at it as well, guys. I mean, you know, I'm not going to make it a big sort of like lambast of Gordon Elliott. We've done that. He's got his punishment, whether you agree with it or the severity and so on. It's more a case of how out of touch is the Racing Post with the racing public. I mean, the tweets that they use to promote it, or that their posts on social media used to promote this article with Elliott, the quotes they used were all about sort of they had a feeling of woe is me and poor me, and the whole, like you said, the horses they lost. Surely, if you were just as a PR basis, and you want to try and redeem this man, you want to see him as human, surely, Matt, you lead with some modicum of an apology or a quote about how he realised what he'd done was wrong, or a quote that, now don't get me wrong, the three of us weren't in the room, we didn't hear what was said, what was left on the cutting room floor, because obviously they won't have quoted everything. But, you know, I want to put it to you, Matt, is this just a massive PR disaster from the Racing Post, or are they just that out of touch with the people that, well, meant to support them?
Well, we can't ignore the fact that he's still a part of the horse racing industry, and he's still a big name with big owners. So they are going to report on him about something sooner or later. They can't just dismiss his existence. But I don't want to go into any massive detail, but they do tend to pick and choose the stories they highlight. I mean, obviously, there's a running story that's been going on for a long period of time, which they fail to give any recognition to whatsoever about a certain owner for whatever reason they have. So yeah, in a way, I agree with Chris about the majority of stuff he says. It was a very woe is me article, poor me. You know, almost like, you know, why has it happened? I have had a couple of conversations with some bigger trainers in the past about various things like overwatering race courses and why we do it, and there does seem to be a lack of they can't get the concept of public perception. So a lot of the times, I don't agree with it all the time, but a lot of the times that race courses are overwatered is for welfare issues, isn't it? It slows the horses down, specifically national hunt racing. It's an attempt to try and stop fatalities or injuries. And the two of the trainers that I spoke to, which were quite high profile names, seemed a bit out of touch with how the public see it. And I think that comes about from being around livestock all their lives. Now, I've been around animals all my life. I've had numerous pets, and then obviously when I started working with horses, I started getting involved with horses when I was about 11. I've basically been around horses all of the time since I was about 11, and I think depending on what sort of environment you come from and what you see on a daily basis, you don't get blasé about the death of an animal, but it maybe it loses its sting after a period of time. Now, you know, that shouldn't really apply to someone like Gordon Elliott, because, as Chris rightly said, these horses have served him, they've served their owners, and they deserve some dignity in death. And to coin a horrible phrase, he didn't read the room. But let's not lose sight of the fact that he didn't want this photograph to be public. There's no way this photograph of him sitting on a dead horse was meant to be seen by other people. Someone's just taken a snapshot. We still don't know who the person was, I don't think, that took the photograph or leaked the photograph to the press. Obviously some sort of vendetta, but deep down, did he really? You know, it's not about the fact whether Gordon Elliott is a cruel person or an ignorant person or whatever. He's a professional person who's doing a professional job, and you can't go around sitting on dead horses. Fact. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. He's let someone take a photograph of him sitting on a dead horse, and you will never get away from that fact. That photograph is now out there.
I mean, he posed for it. He knew it was being taken.
Exactly.
You know,
and doing this as well was another nail in the coffin for me. So I can accept, to play devil's advocate, I can accept that some people who have been around horses all their lives maybe the sting out of a dead animal slightly is not as traumatic maybe to them as it might be to someone who's seeing it for the first time. But professionally, it was shocking. And as Chris said, I couldn't give a stuff the fact that he's lost Envoy Allen or he's lost Simonas. That's his fault, 100%. He needs to get over it.
I mean, you and I were chatting before we came live here, Matt, and you know, it's a dodgy sort of way to go about it, but this whole, like we said, this sort of poor man's tale of like how he's been wronged and how he's not wronged, but how he's lost so much. I was saying to you, I said, this sort of attitude, it's not as if he's not done it himself. He's not battled back from life-saving illness and come back and ridden a winner. He's not, you know, look at Bob Champion, like we said, who came back from cancer and rode the Grand National winner. There's a redemption story. Everything that's happened to this man is all due to actions. All right, he didn't say the photo. Yeah, fine. All right, you know, it's got to be some accountability, but he still did it. His actions have cost him something. If you misbehave at work or do something your employer wouldn't like in any respect, you lose your job. It's not someone else's fault. You've done whatever you've done that's cost you whatever it's cost you. And that's it. You know, you've got no one to blame but yourself. Deal with the consequences. You know, a bit of a cliche, but
I think the disconnect is people who are involved in racing and been around horses all their lives to the public is huge. It's a massive gulf. Now, people like Willie Mullins, Henry de Bromhead have been training for many years. They would have trained hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of horses, and sadly, because of the nature of the industry, a lot of those horses would have died through one reason or another. They've become accustomed to it. They're aware it's a risk involved in the sport. Every time, you know, a horse gallops or it races or whatever, there's a risk to it. Now, this is why I think the issue comes in their eyes. In their eyes, even though they know what he's done is distasteful, he hasn't actually been. It's not a welfare issue. It hasn't. Now things have come out, haven't they, with the slaughterhouse in Swindon, etc., which has muddied the waters, which has even made him look even more uncaring, for want of a better word, which hasn't helped his cause whatsoever. But we're talking about people at home that maybe have pets that they've loved for years, horses that might have owned for 20 years, dogs that they've owned for 14 years. They're pets to the public, whereas racehorses are not pets. They're a working animal, and I think that's the way a lot of people talk about it in Ireland, whether it's right or wrong. I remember Ruby Walsh basically saying they're tools of a trade, aren't they? They're livestock, they're working animals, just like you'd work a sheepdog has a purpose, or you know, various other animals that have purposes. You know, we used to plough fields with horses, Suffolk punches, and things like this. So I think that's the gulf between racing fraternity and the public, whereas, like, as I say, the racing fraternity and the people who've worked with these horses for decades are slightly more akin to accidents and death of livestock than the viewers, the general public. But what I'm trying to say is that they need to be more aware of the general public's feelings about this, because we need the general public to support this game and keep it going. We need people coming to the races. We need people to bet. and things like this, they should know by now that doing silly things like this can only be detrimental to horse racing.
I mean, taking aside what Gordon Elliott's done, and I'll come to you with this, Chris, do you think the media, especially the Racing Post being the trade paper, the number one go-to for racing news pretty much across the UK, Ireland, do you think they have to have, not take any blame for what happened, but they've got a massive decision in their press room as to which way they're going to lead with various stories, whether or not they're going to go a softly approach, whether they're going to ignore something, whether or not they're going to heavily focus on something. Do you think the public perception is not that anything should be brushed under the carpet or hidden, but do you think the Racing Post plays a massive part in that?
Of course it does. I mean, their entire reporting on this case in general has been absolutely appalling, totally out of touch with the general public. And it was an interesting point that Matt brought up. Of course, you become hardened to these sort of things being a professional within racing, but the fans of racing, your paying customers, they're not hardened to this type of thing. Such callous acts like Gordon Elliott sitting on a dead horse or sending sound horses to abattoirs and so on, that for the public, that is an absolute disaster, and the Racing Post shouldn't be attempting to cover up or to glorify someone's return or anything like that. Just before we move away from Gordon Elliott, I don't want this to become a personal vendetta because he's been given a ban, and whether I like it or not, that's what he's been given, and that's it. But you see, since his ban, you've seen him active on social media, advertising employment opportunities at Country House. This is a guy who was banned. He's sticking two fingers up at the authorities. Everyone's running with it. There's been a Be Kind campaign, We Stand Behind Gordon and everything else. We've had jockeys who have admitted that Gordon's been on the phone giving them advice. We've had another recent case with Stephen Mann, who had a horse, this is a direct welfare issue, where one of his horses was so hungry she began eating herself. This guy was employed as an assistant trainer by an Irish trainer. What the fuck is going on here? You cannot be so out of touch with reality. There's bound to be a severe public backlash from people who are not from within the realms of the racing world. They're going to react poorly, and the Racing Post attempting to champion this comeback, honestly, it's absolutely sickening.
Well, I think it's safe to say I think the three of us all agree that Gordon might not be the name above the door at the moment, but he's certainly not stepped away as potentially, should have been the case.
This is where the Racing Post should be turning on these people. They should be demanding certain levels of behaviour from professionals within racing. There's been a jockey involved in sitting on a dead racehorse as well. Absolutely crazy. They should know by now how the public expect them to behave and treat their animals both whilst they're living and dead. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I mean,
the difference. I mean, there is a massive difference between the Stephen Mann and the Gordon Elliott situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I suppose you could argue whether the bans were tough enough or not, and I'd probably sit on the side where they probably weren't tough enough. That one was a genuine welfare issue. When you've got horses so emaciated that they're at death's door and they'd rather eat parts of themselves to survive, compared to however crass and a horrible situation it was, a dead horse is a dead horse, and there can't be any welfare issues. But what then happens is that people's imagination leads on to believe that if he's comfortable enough smiling sitting on a dead horse, what else is he comfortable enough doing? And then obviously we had the Panorama thing where one of his horses turned up at a slaughterhouse. That doesn't portray a good picture at all. But we had the Howard Johnson case, a trainer in this country where he denerved the horse's foot, which is completely illegal. You cannot do it. And he's banned, and he never returned in actual fact. But there is a massive difference in what is deemed to be, which is just the perception of Gordon Elliott sitting on a dead horse to actually a welfare issue of live animals. So there is. I'd just like to clarify there is quite a large gap in those things, but It's just the lack of professionalism, isn't it? I think
It's like you said, Gordon. I'm not going to start wholeheartedly championing Gordon, but to play devil's advocate, Gordon Elliott's not been found guilty of a welfare issue. He's not caused the death of an animal, an injury to an animal, anything of that ilk. It's just the public perception and its lack of professionalism that has landed him in hot water. Last thing I'll say just on it as well. I mean, obviously we've all heard of rhyming slang. I think it's safe to say that Irish rhyming slang at the minute is Denise Foster, Gordon Imposter. But just in regards to the Racing Post and focusing on the Racing Post away from Gordon, as a level of how in touch they are with the public and people who read it, I want to ask you both, and I don't know if you know this, but I'll put it to you. Obviously, the cost of a Racing Post, I think, is somewhere. I think the last time I bought one is about £3.20 to £3.50 on a Saturday, which is astronomical. You imagine the cost of that over a week. It's certainly.
You can add another £1.20 on top of that.
Well, there we go. That's how long ago it has since I've been buying a Racing Post. But this Gordon Elliott piece was behind a paywall on the Racing Post, which is what they deem on the Racing Post the ultimate package. I want to put it to you, and I don't know if you know. I'll ask you, Matt, first. How much a month do you think that costs to be an ultimate package member on the Racing Post?
Is it about something like $19.99, something like that? Is it?
It's all right. You're going $19.99, Chris.
I'll say 40 quid.
£34.95 a month.
Wow.
$34.95 a month to read a fluff piece championing Gordon Elliott, and apparently they get a few extra tips, a tracker, and some extra information, bloodstock related, and so on and so forth, and perhaps a bit more of an in-depth race card. £34.95 a month. I think, if I'm right, that would be more than the cost of Racing TV and Sky Racing subscription combined.
Have we got a subscribers number? How many subscribers?
No idea how many have subscribed to it, but just the cost. Jeez.
But how many people, unless you're in the industry, how many members of the general public buy Racing Post every day? Who would go into a shop and spend £4, whatever it is, 30, 20 on a Monday for a Wolverhampton person?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say outside of people who work in racing, you're probably going to see more Racing Posts put on a wall of the bookmakers than you are popped through someone's letterbox or under someone's arm when they've been to the post office, the news agents. But yeah, it's the last I talked about it, chaps. We've done it to death. But yeah, Racing Post, put your ideas up. Gordon Elliott is by no means, cracking trainer. He's had some fantastic success, good at what he does. But let sleeping dogs lie. This is not a man that should be fronting the sport after such. Because let's be honest as well, it wasn't just that controversy like you touched upon. It was the panorama thing. Just leave it be. Do you know what I mean? Moving on, chaps, something a bit more light-hearted. Also doing the rounds on social media. Leona Mayor, retired jockey, now face off. Is it Racing TV? Is it Racing TV? The Scarlet, right? Well, either way, she decided in her infinite wisdom to stick this on Twitter. Can you tell me why I can't pay for my food with a £50 note? Not legal tender to you, McDonald's UK. How ridiculous. Now, I don't know if it's a humble brag from the owner saying that she's got 50s in her wallet. I've not seen a 50. Well, goodness knows how long. But anyway, look, we've all had ill-judged tweets or ill-judged moments when we've been a bit like, but Jesus, like, what? Anyway, how the other half live, you know what I mean? When you can get turfed away from McDonald's. So, with that in mind, something a bit light-hearted, chaps, has there ever been a point, and I know the answer for you, Chris, probably about 200 odd times, where you've been turfed out of the premises or refused, you've refused your custom, or even you've refused the custom? I will go first in embarrassing myself, and why I'm doing this, I don't know, but I'm going to show a text from, I think it was 2017. I think it was basically a couple of days after my birthday. And I was out drinking with Mr. Connolly, and I decided, well, I didn't decide, I think two bouncers decided that I was no longer in a state of being able to be a customer anymore at a certain nightclub and decided to send these. I mean, if anyone who's watching this on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube can decipher these messages, I mean, I will give myself some credit. In one of the 5 messages I've tried to send to Chris to tell him that I was outside the club and not inside. I do use the phrase top notch. So whether or not that was a racing reference, I have no idea. I also try and, I think, talk some sort of pigeon with cuckoo. But chaps, I mean, you can't get worse than that. Chris?
No.
Surely you've been turned out somewhere.
Once upon a time in York, I can't remember what me and my dad had been doing. I think we'd been on a day out. But we went to a steakhouse to get something to eat. I'd never had a steak in my entire life. And of course, me and my dad, being the northern blokes we were, ordered a well-done steak, to which the chef refused. So we started off. That's about the most embarrassing thing I've got.
In terms of being refused custom, I know I've refused to be a customer. I mean, you again, God, it all seems to be when I'm with you, Chris. So I don't know whether or not you're the bad influencer I am, but I mean, we met first time Cheltenham Festival 2014, I want to say. I mean, I'm from the Northwest, you're from Yorkshire. Rocked up and saw the cost of booze and just refused flatly to pay what was, I think it was about £7 a pint at the Cheltenham Festival.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, if we were on Leona Mayor's money and we had £50 notes in our back pocket, you know, then we might have well, actually we wouldn't, to be fair. But anyway, chaps, yeah, Leona, don't worry about it. You'll be all right, I'm sure. Just go to a drive-thru. It'll be okay. Anyway, chaps, moving on to something more racing related. And this is the part of the show where you and Matt go head-to-head, Mr. Connolly, with what is now being deemed head-to-head.
Head-to-head.
So this week, as we're on as everyone in the racing world seems to be on a let's hail how good Gordon Elliott is, thought we'll stick with that theme and, you know, follow suit. Now, last week, I put to you guys the best miler of the last decade, aside from Frankel. Then Matt, you ended up with Kingman. Chris, you put forward Palace Pier. You guys on social media were able to vote and, you know, basically see who was right in this instance, shall we say. Now, with a total of let's have a look here, drum roll, 54% to 46%, so very, very close indeed. Now, it's a surprise to me, and I wouldn't have voted for it, but it was Palace Pier that came out on top over Kingman.
Shocking.
I think I'm trying to win this one.
I know. It's those Aga Khan horses, that's what you want to be worried about. So, lads, this week, moving on, head-to-head, obviously, despite all the controversy, Gordon Elliott has trained some amazing horses in his time. I want your best horse first, Mr. Connolly, that Gordon Elliott has ever trained. And again, we'll put them head-to-head. You have a couple of minutes on the clock. Give us your reasons, and we'll see who from our social media following they agree with. So, Mr. Connolly, you are up first. Take it away, my friend.
Yeah, it's quite a difficult one. I mean, obviously Gordon has had some very high-end horses, the likes of Apple's Jade and history-making Tiger Roll. But my vote would go to Don Cossack. He looked a Gold Cup winner well before he won the Gold Cup. He was a Mellon Chase winner, a Punchestown Gold Cup winner. Absolutely fantastic horse. I mean, he'd have either won the King George or come second in QCAD's King George, but for falling. He redeemed himself no end. He went to the Cheltenham Festival a couple of times. It never happened to him. And on his final ever start, he went round in the Gold Cup. I think he was sent off a 9-4 favourite. And he righted the wrongs that had happened beforehand. He was an absolute top-class horse. He didn't look the biggest on the eye, but he was brilliant when he was on his day. I remember him absolutely pissing up in the Mellon Chase entry, and the way he won his Gold Cup was fantastic. I was so glad for him that he got to retire as well afterwards. I don't know what actually happened to him, if it was a physical thing, but I was so glad that he went out on top and righted his wrongs. Don Cossack, easy.
So it's Don Cossack for Chris. Mr. Polly, a couple of minutes left on the clock. Are you ready to rock with your best Gordon Elliott horse? Take it away.
Well, yeah, I can't. I don't want to disagree with Chris entirely. I mean, Don Cossack, in terms of official ratings, I think he peaked at 177, Gold Cup winner. You know, he was a very high-end steeplechaser. But I'm going to go for a little bit of a sentimental one with Tiger Roll. He's a horse for me that embodies national hunt racing. He was a small horse. He's the nearest thing we've had to Red Rum. We all know Red Rum's an absolute legend, a national hunt legend, and he's the nearest thing we've had to Red Rum for a long time. He was on the race course from an early age. I know Red Rum won a 2-year-old race, and the rest is history with these Grand Nationals. But Tiger Roll won a 3-year-old juvenile hurdle at Market Raisin for Nigel Hawke. He was purchased by Gigginstown. He won the Triumph Hurdle, and he's won at multiple. I'll forgive him the cross country races, and not novelty race. Not a massive fan of the race, but to rock up and win it as many times as he did. Multiple Cheltenham Festival winner. I think his second win at the Cheltenham Festival after the Triumph Hurdle was the 4-mile novice chase, and that literally just sums this horse up. He's won a Boyne Hurdle at 2.5 miles in between. This is just the type of horse that embodies national hunt racing, and what makes it great, isn't it? Because he's a horse that everyone's followed. He probably would have won 3 Grand Nationals, but for once missing out to COVID, the year we didn't have it because of COVID, and then missing out again because his owner got the hump rather pathetically, in all honesty. And it's a sentimental vote. Obviously, he wasn't the highest rated horse that Gordon Elliott's ever trained, but tough, small horse against the odds, hard as nails.
I mean, you can't really argue with those two, can you? Geez. So it's Don Cossack or it's Tiger Roll. Make sure you stay tuned on Facebook or Twitter. We'll be putting that poll up within the next 24 hours. So by Monday evening, you should have the ability to vote. Obviously, if you want to put comments in there, whether or not there's other Gordon Elliott horses that have won you over that perhaps deserve a mention, by all means, put them in the comments and make sure you cast your vote in time for next week to see which one comes out on top. Moving on, chaps, we've looked at horses of the past. Let's have a look at horses potentially for the future. As we do every week, we have a look at the racing over the past 7 days and any horses that may have been unlucky losers or also that have absolutely stormed to victory that we think you should be putting in your notebook. So, chaps, it is time for the notebook. So, guys, I want to go first. There's just the one horse I like the look of. It seems to be a bit of a running theme with me fancying horses trained in Ireland, and it's low-grade stuff from me, I'm afraid, but you wouldn't expect any better from me. And he's a 4-year-old filly that's trained by Adrian McGuinness, goes by the name of Eglish, Eglish. I really fancied the horse at Dundalk earlier in the week, and I think he finished 6th at Dundalk that day. Was held out the back, given no run whatsoever by the jockey. Jumped out the stalls and was pretty promptly given the the tighter rein treatment. Once he was let loose into the sort of final straight, the horse doesn't like to come from the back, so that was indicative as to whether or not the horse was meant to win that day. But he did fly home. Ended up picking up 6th, flying past beaten horses. Now on a really decent mark. I think that horse is being put away for a win not too far in the distant future and potentially would be a big prize. I think it went off around 16-1 at Dundalk earlier in the week. And I think if it might not be next time, it might not even be the time after that, but I'd say within the next 1 month to 6 weeks, if you're brave enough to wait that time, if it races by then, its mark's going to be very, very tasty indeed. And I think the price will be just as tasty as well. Matt, anything you've liked over the last 7 days?
Well, I think starting a negative, because we need to be balanced here, negatives and positives. I think Chris will agree with me here. I think you can take all of the Haydock form on Saturday with a pinch of salt, some indifferent rides. Everything was winning from the front. Now, we all know that riding racehorses isn't easy, but sometimes you just have to use your brain a little bit. And I know some jockeys might go there with orders, and sometimes it just goes like that because your horse needs to be held up and you're a hostage to circumstances sometimes. But just the same pattern, wasn't it? Every time, get the horse on the front end, slow him up, sprint up the straight, firm ground. You're not stopping. So yeah, without going on about that too much, I'll take those results with a pinch of salt. But on a positive note, I really like the horse that ran on Friday and won at Ascot called Wanese. Just looking at my notes here, is trained by Charlie Hills for Shadwell. He caught the eye in a maiden at Newbury. He caught everyone's eye, including the stewards, as to he got a tender, should we say, a tender ride that day. Now, I'm going to make excuses for this because I think he's quite a tricky horse, and the last thing you want to do is blow a horse's mind on its first visit to the racecourse. So he had an education, and the horse that beat him, Elliott of Gosden's, they had a rematch at Ascot on Friday, and despite doing a lot of things wrong, Wanese was slowly away, pulled hard, but in the end, I think turned out to be a comfortable winner. And he's definitely a horse to keep an eye on. The maiden where he finished sixth behind Elliott, the horse he beat at Ascot, two winners have come out of that race already. Oh, Herbert's Rain, who I napped on and won on Saturday. I just add that in there, just a little proviso there. And another horse which Godolphin think a lot of, New Kingdom, has actually won since finishing fifth in this race. So I think that was a decent race at Newbury, and the fact that Wanese has come out and comfortably reversed that form with Elliott, I think he's definitely going to improve. He'll definitely get a mile, and I think maybe a race like the Royal Lodge or the Race and Post Trophy might be his next target, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him running well in a race like that. So Wanese.
So it's Wanese for Mr. Polly. Mr. Connolly, yours, my man?
Yeah, I'm going to double down on what Matt just said about some of the rides at Haydock and that form. It seriously needs shoving in the dustbin, unfortunately. You cannot give horses the amount of ground they were expected to make up over the weekend. Jesus wept. But anyway, I was going to actually talk about Bailly today, who was impressive in France, and I thought going forward, if he was a decent price on Champions Day, I thought I'd probably have a go on him, but somehow he's usurped the Palace Pier at the top of the market, so God knows what's happened there. But I'm going to put forward Jawal, who I think he ran in the sprint at Haydock. It was one of the later races, and he finished fourth. I don't mind that race at all. He was given plenty to do. He was awkwardly away at the start, and Rory's going to crucify me in a minute because it's my favourite meeting of the season next week at Doncaster, and I can't remember the name of the sprint, but Jawal was such an eye-catcher behind Mondam Edge and Copper Knight. That was a nice race at Haydock the other day, and he was tenderly handled. He looks just the type for the 5.5 furlong sprint at Doncaster next week. I'm not overly enamoured with his mark, in all honesty, but Michael Dodds has got his horses going quite well, and I can see him running a very, very big race.
Is he a former Doncaster winner? I think.
Definitely, yeah. He's won a few times around Doncaster now. This is a new thing that Rory will know about me. I absolutely love repeat offenders around Doncaster. Like I said, his mark's a bit iffy, but he served notice at Haydock the other day under a soft ride. I'm not going to go any deeper than that. It was a soft ride. It's very difficult to come from a long way behind at Haydock. He was a long way behind. He was an eye catcher.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've all been punting enough that we know that certain race courses that, I think Catterick's a prime example of one as well. If you've got a horse that acts well around there and shows decent form, it's such a massive plus compared to perhaps some other tracks. And obviously that's just knowledge of the races and various courses. But yeah, Joel, I didn't see the race.
That's the Portland you're thinking of, Chris.
That's the one. Matt crucified me instead.
Yeah, there's no prices yet, so unfortunately.
I think he will definitely run in it. I think Michael Todd said so beforehand, so that race should put him on perfectly. The mark puts me off, but it was a definite eye catcher.
So it's English for myself, Winnie's for Matt, potentially with the Royal Lodge or the Racing Post trophy in mind, and Joel at Doncaster, more than likely the Portland, his destination. Those are our three, so make sure you put them in your trackers or your notebooks or wherever you like to keep your little racing notes. Make sure you do. Lads, last but by no means least, obviously we saw Chris take home the victory for the first time last week. This week, can he retain it, or can Matt get back to winning ways with a game of Who Am I? Now, chaps, I know Matt knows the theme of these five. Chris doesn't. So, for anyone watching, take a good look at Chris's face when the following words come out of my mouth. So, lads, the 5 horses, and I gave Matt this clue before, so it's only fair to do the same to Chris. These 5 horses, look at his inquisitive face, bless him. They are all former Cheltenham Festival winners.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Trained by Gordon Elliott.
Could have been worse. Could have been point-to-point winners from the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, ridden specifically by Matt and people he rode against. So, chaps, without further ado, it is another game of Who Am I? Look at his face, I can't say. If you're listening to this in the podcast, go onto Facebook, look at about 42 minutes in, and you'll see the face of Mr. Connolly. Dun, dun, dun.
Tell me you've been stitched up without telling me you've been stitched up.
There we go. Right, chaps. Here we go. Who am
I?
Right, lads. Here we go. Horse number 1. Clue number 1. I won at the 2011 Cheltenham Festival. On the same day, Gordon Elliott had his first festival winner. I was Elliott's second winner of the day and his second ever festival success. Clue number 2. My Cheltenham victory came in a handicap that was further than 2 mile 4 furlongs, but shorter than 3 miles. Clue number 3. After my Cheltenham hurdle victory, I never won another hurdles race. Clue number 4. As a chaser, I won twice as a novice, but never passed that division for Elliott, claiming my last success for Gordon in October 2012. And clue number 5. I competed in 3 Grade 1 races that included the 2013 Manifesto Novices Chase at Aintree. I finished 4th behind the winner Big Bucks in the 2011 Liverpool Hurdle, and 4th in the 2010 JCB Triumph Hurdle.
The race, it's the Coral Cup. It's the Coral Cup you're referring to, isn't it? I think the race.
Do you want me to just quickly run through those 5 again?
Or
Clue 1, I won at the 2011 Cheltenham Festival on the same day. Gordon Elliott had his first festival winner. I was Elliott's second winner of the day and his second ever festival success. My Cheltenham victory came in a handicap that was further than 2 miles 4, shorter than 3 miles.
It's the Coral Cup.
After my Cheltenham hurdle victory, I never won another hurdles race. As a chaser, I won twice as a novice, but never passed that division for Elliott, claiming my last success for Gordon in October 2012. And I completed in 3 Grade 1 races that included the 2013 Manifesto Novices Chase at Aintree. I finished 4th behind the winner Big Bucks in the 2011 Liverpool Hurdle. and 4th in the 2010 JCB Triumph Hurdle. Chaps, I'm going to have to push you for an answer if you don't have one.
No.
No. The name of the horse with the initials CB, Carlito Briganti. No.
Was it the Coral Cup?
It
Oh,
was.
this is
It was the
great idea, this one, isn't it? Mr. National on here. Fucking hell.
Hey, well, it's all right. It's still 0-0. We're all right,
I'll
Chris.
take 0-0. I'll take 0-0.
You'll take 0-0.
No
Horse-
tiebreaker.
Horse number 2. I am one of 7 Elliott Festival winners from 2020. Clue number 2. I am a French import who joined Elliott's yard in October 2016. Chris.
Oh, it's not going to be because it's an Irish point where it's come from. Bollocks.
I'm going to have to push you for an answer. You've said your name.
Oh, it's not Sam Crow, but bollocks.
You're going with Sam Crow?
That's it.
It's not Sam Crow. It is not Sam Crow. Clue number 3. Now, Matt, you can have one free hit of this, knowing that Chris can't answer. Clue number 3. The highest grade I've won at is a one-time grade 2 success at Navan. The highest grade I've ever won at is a grade 2 success at Navan. And that's the only other grade 2 they've raced at as well. Clue number 4. I finished second at the festival in 2021. A winner in 2020 and finished second at the festival in 2021. Clue number 5. I have a festival record that reads 4th, 1st, and 2nd in consecutive seasons. Chris's face.
Oh, is that thing in the
Do you want me to read them out to you again, buddy?
Yeah.
I am one of 7 Elliott Festival winners from 2020. I am a French. I'm trying not to laugh because I know it's a horse that Chris knows. I am a French import who joined Elliott's yard in October 2016. The highest grade I've won at is one-time grade 2 success at Navan. I finished second at the festival in 2021. And I have a festival record of 4th, 1st, and 2nd in consecutive seasons.
Matt.
Name of the horse?
Cider Burley.
It is, isn't it, Chris? It's Cider Burley. A horse that you've tipped and banged on about.
Bollocks.
That is 1 point to Matt. At least he has to get to clue 5. That is 1 point to Matt. Okay. Horse number 3. I was born in America in February. Oh, that is not the right. Hang on 1 minute. I was born in America in February. Hang on 1 minute. I've got the date wrong there. Sorry, boys. Sorry.
Hang on, let me type in on my computer. February what?
I was born in America in February 2008. Raced for Pascal Barry in France for my first 2 starts before moving to Ireland. Born in America in February 2008, but raced for Pascal Barry in France for my first 2 starts before moving to Ireland.
2008.
For my first 14 starts, my jockeys donned pink silks. But after a 7th in the 2013 Supreme Novices Hurdle, they wore the green and gold of JP McManus. So for my first 14 starts, my jockeys donned pink silks. But after a 7th in the 2013 Supreme Novices Hurdle, they wore the green and gold of JP McManus. Clue number 3. I won the listed Ladbroke Hurdle at Ascot.
Matt,
I won the...
is it Cause of Causes?
It was Cause of Causes. Clues 4 and 5, I'll read them anyway. Claimed a total of 9 victories in the National Hunt Sphere, but one of my biggest achievements was a place in the Grand National. And the final clue was I was partnered by Jamie Codd for all 3 consecutive Cheltenham Festival wins. That's 3 points to Matt to make it 4 Matt and 0 for Mr. Connolly.
Well, that's not it.
We've got 2 more to go. You can still claim it back. Or will it be a whitewash? The first ever whitewash. Here we go. Horse number 4. I last ran in the 2017 Punchestown Champion Hurdle and finished 4th. I last ran in the 2017 Punchestown Champion Hurdle and finished 4th. Clue number 2. In my one and only flat start in the UK, that's my one and only flat start in the UK, I refused to race for trainer Owen Burrows. In my one and only flat start in the UK, I refused to race for trainer Owen Burrows. Matt.
Complete guess. And I don't think he even trained at Lebaik.
That is correct. It is Lebaik.
Oh,
After clue number 2, the other clues was I held a 100% record at the Cheltenham Festival. I was a grey who sadly passed away at the age of 9. And final clue, I refused to race a further 3 times under the tutelage of Gordon Elliott. That is 8 points to Matt, 0 to Chris. It's all said and done, but we have to fire horse number 5. See whether or not Mr. Connolly can save any face or if he's going to end up with a dog.
Oh, yeah.
Horse number 5. He's the only Gordon Elliott trained winner of the Johnny Henderson Grand Annual. Clue number 2. At the age of 8, the horse is still in training and last raced at Killarney back in May this year. Clue number 3. After his 2020 success, he returned to the festival this year, finishing 10th in a race of 19 runners. So this year he ran at the festival and finished 10th in a race of 19 runners. His only UK victory came in the aforementioned festival success, and all of his other 4 National Hunt wins came in his native island. Final clue, he went off the 7-2 favourite under jockey David Russell when he won at Cheltenham. Won the Johnny Henderson Grand Annual in 2020 as the 7-2 favourite under Davy Russell.
I can't think. Can you? I can picture it, Chris. I can't think of its name.
I'm saying, mate. I vaguely remember this happening, but
I knew Davy Russell was on it before the last clue, but I can't think of his name. Was it a Gigginstown horse? I'm not sure it was.
I'll give you another clue. It was not a Gigginstown horse.
No.
Not even hazarding a guess.
Can't.
as soon as you say it, we'll know it.
Yeah. Who owns it?
Oh, I do not know. I'll tell you. Give me a second. The name of the owner is... the Northern 4 Racing Partnership.
Great. That's not helped at all.
Not at all. A really big time yard. Yeah, big time horse.
No, I don't know.
The name of the horse is Chosen Mate.
Chosen
Mate is the name of the horse. We go, Jack. It is a whitewash. It's 8 points to Matt, 0 to Chris. I'll make sure it's something kinder. Seeing as though it's Doncaster next week. Is it next week?
Yeah, sound like it.
Do Portland winners of the mid-80s.
Of the last 10 years. Tell you what, seeing as though it's Doncaster next week, I will pinpoint, and it will be so you can get studying, Doncaster Festival winners or St. Ledger Festival winners since the year 2000. There we go. There we go. You've been told you've got a week's prep time. No excuses. But fair play to Matt. 8 points to nothing. Normal service resumes, Matt, after last week's blip.
I feel like I had a slightly unfair advantage there, but I'll take it.
Well, you know, you get it where you can.
I think you've had a slightly unfair fucking advantage, you know. Fucking hell. 100 bucks.
So, folks, obviously, thank you very much for listening. Any likes, comments, shares, and support is very, very much welcome. One thing I do need to let everyone know that's listening and watching is the start of our weekly 4 for a Score competition. Did kick off on Saturday. It was a very, very tough 4 races. No one took home the prize, so it will be a rollover next week. Next Saturday, it'll be a double prize pot. Obviously, a lot of us can take part. That includes myself, Chris, Matt. If you can pick 4 winners from the 4 races we provide, you scoop home the lot. Do not worry if you don't know, however, because throughout the month, if you get the most amount of winners throughout those weeks, you will scoop home a bit of money as well in your skyrocket. So make sure you check that out. Every Thursday evening, we'll be putting up a post with the 4 races for that Saturday. I've been Rory. These have been 2 idiots. Thank you for watching the Turf Talk podcast.